Welcome to Ride On, episode 3. I'm James Gross, and I'm joined by my co-host, Julia Thane. Julia, how you doing?
Doing great, James. Doing great.
Yeah? We ready to go this week?
I think we're ready to go. I'm double caffeinated this morning. Got my coffee, got my tea.
Okay, you went coffee, then tea. Your tea is caffeinated.
Tea is caffeinated. Yeah, tea can be caffeinated. James, I know this is sort of a new concept to you, but oolong tea, caffeinated. Green tea, caffeinated. Black tea, caffeinated. We could keep going. We could do the entire episode like this if you'd like.
Do you tea or milk?
No, I know that's a thing. I know people like tea and milk. I know the Brits are into that. Actually, chai tea with milk, delicious. That's the only way to have chai tea. But no, generally, I'm a no milk in tea person.
How about coffee?
Definitely not. Black.
Oh,
Yeah.
You're
Yeah. What do you have? Like oat milk? You have soy milk.
Oh, really? No, I don't put cardboard in my coffee. This is like maybe the one, I love London so much, but the one reason I could never move to London is because they don't have half and half. Like they give you milk, they act like milk with half and half, and it's like, no, that's not half and half. This is blue in my experience. Anyway, yeah, half and half. Julia Platt. Now you know. Okay, to explain a little bit about Ride On and the method, each week, Julia and I pick 5 topics from the world of mobility. We pull the topics from the Micromobility Newsletters, which we hope you subscribe to, and we talk about them. We go back and forth on some of our thoughts from those topics. And so, yeah, that's the format, and that's what we stick to. And then as well, just before we get going, I wanted to give out actually 2 tickets this week to our winners for the best comments on YouTube. The first one goes to Carl in San Diego. That's the username. And I don't know. I assume he's also in San Diego with that username. Just to pull this up really quickly, Carl left a couple of comments. The one that got him the win was how he converted a 20-year-old Greenspeed GLR recumbent trike. Trike was a big topic last week, to an electric assist vehicle. He says he can do 35 on the flats, and he's got quite a battery and mid-drive motor behind it. There's a link in the YouTube. You can see it on our comments if you want. Actually, Carl's video is incredible. And Carl, if you have time, we could use some video and audio help over here. But we were very impressed by what you put together, and we wanted to give you a win. But for the first time ever, we're going to give away two tickets. So one goes to Carl. Carl, you can come to Micromobility America or Micromobility Europe on us. And the second one goes to actually X Auto, who we featured, who has a new moped, self-balancing moped trike. And we were wondering how you actually pronounced the name, and, it's spelled X-O-T-O. And Julia actually got it right. She said X Auto. And they just confirmed it in the comments. So we appreciate that. X Auto, you also have a ticket for you for either Micromobility Europe in June or Micromobility America in the fall. Thanks again for the comments. For anyone that wants to leave comments, clearly we really appreciate the engagement around it. So yeah, that's it on that side. And now, Julia, I think we're ready to go. If you're ready to go.
We are ready to go. Although, James, I have to say, you're getting a little fast and loose with these free tickets. I mean, what's next? Are we doing 3 tickets? Are we doing like a free e-bike? Like, are you going to be, I don't know, auctioning off your house? What's going on here?
I mean, anything for the engagement, Julia. So, I'm Mr. Bus, as we said. So
trying to get those likes, trying to get those comments. Amazing. All right, James. Well, let's kick it off with one of my favorite topics, parking spaces. So from Planet is In this week, there was an article about how cars are outgrowing their parking spaces. This was actually a main topic of conversation when I spoke with Matthew Iglesias during Micromobility World. We talked about how parking lot design and parking lot designers decide space sizes using the 85th percentile car size, which is kind of a weird thing to do, right? So, in the past, this has really served the parking industry and the car industry very well, and make sure that space sizes accommodate the vast majority of American cars and leave about 20 inches of space for people to open their doors and maneuver on either side. And then I don't know if you've ever parked in a parking space that was too small, or in Europe for that matter, or tried to squeeze yourself into a parallel parking spot. But I've definitely had to do that shimmy where you try to get out your car, you go into the back seat and then around. But the problem is, James, turns out our cars have gotten larger. So now when we talk about the 85th percentile method, what it's not doing is capturing the changes in car size. So even the size of the 10th percentile car has exploded. 50th percentile car has grown tremendously. 70th percentile car has also grown. But the 85th percentile car is now, which car? What would you guess based on this picture? I've got to give it away. But
Ford
I could give you a free ticket.
That's a Ford F-150, I believe.
It is. It is. It's not the electric one. It's just a regular Ford F-150. So I probably should have chosen a different image. But the Ford F-150 is actually the 85th percentile car. And you see, in this poor parking space, it definitely does not fit. But certainly, if we're starting to design parking spaces for the Ford F-150, we're going to see a lot more space go over to parking spaces itself. So, as Horace would say, parking is real estate in hiding. I think what we need to see is a different way of designing parking spaces that doesn't just accommodate larger and larger cars. Curious to hear what you think, James. Are you driving around one of these Ford F-150s? How many parking spaces do you have at your house? How many cars do you have? Let's do a little bit of naming and shaming.
Naming and shaming. Oh, I have a lot to be guilty for, and I will repent when needed. We actually only have one car, but it's not really a car. It's a home on wheels. It's a Sprinter van that has been, sort of retroed, and we can get all the kids in and we can go camping with it and stuff. But it also is our daily commuter for when we can't ride our e-bikes and other micromobility vehicles around. And it is very hard to park, and it should be, but it is very hard to park. And it's amazing when you go into certain lots and it's filled with the 85th percentile vehicle, like the one you showed earlier. It's hard. And it should be hard. And yeah, I think Horace's real estate and hiding is a good point. I also think, I think Horace has a great quote around, if you want to understand the car, study parking, which, there's so much drama around parking. If you go to, city council meetings and things like that. Here in California, we deal with the California Coastal Commission. If you live near the coast, which, I really think should be rebranded as, lawyers that enforce parking regulations. Because it's like this thing that saves the coast. And in many ways, it is a good thing. I mean, they want to make sure there's access to the coast for everyone, which I respect and appreciate. But it is crazy the way they, enforce parking. Everyone wants it. But it is of course a big detractor from living in urban environments, living in walkable environments, living in safe environments. So yeah, I don't know where this one goes, Julia. Clearly there has to be standards that the cars can't keep getting wider, but they are, as we've talked about ad nauseum, they are getting heavier, taller, all those other things.
Yeah, and that's a good point, James. I mean, that certainly affects the safety of other people outside the vehicle too. I mean, as cars are getting larger, and we talk about this a lot, and they're heavier and they're going at faster speeds. I mean, it's hard not to call them what they are, which is essentially pretty big, determinants of pedestrian and cyclist safety, meaning like negative determinants. So, getting harder and harder to have outside the vehicle safety as cars are getting bigger.
Yep, totally. All right, let's shift from a big vehicle and parking to a small vehicle, but a vehicle that still moves really quickly. So Vora Motors has the new Roadrunner Pro out. This vehicle that I'll show you here is really impressive on one level. I think this is a 14-inch wheel base that they have, two 1,000-watt motors, and this thing can do a top speed of 51 miles per hour. So I really just want to leave this. I want to open the floor to my friend that likes motorcycles and going fast, Julia. Would you find yourself on the Roadrunner Pro going 50 miles per hour on 14-inch wheels? And just to, maybe for proxy on the 14-inch wheels, this is the same size wheel as like the Jetson, which is a very popular e-bike for kids or for people that you can buy at a Costco. These wheels are small. So just curious if I would find you on this vehicle, Julia.
No. I mean, probably not. Like, let me not say no, never. but I would definitely want to test ride this one out before I got, before I went anywhere close to 50 miles an hour. Just looking at it, James, I mean, this photo is a little bit hard to determine the actual size of this vehicle, especially when you're looking at it next to a train. But the 14-inch wheels, I think, would give me a bit of hesitancy around how stable the vehicle is. So I'm really curious about test riding it and seeing, does this feel comfortable at 30 miles an hour, let alone at 50? What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's well, one, the reviews are really good on it. Electric reviewed it earlier this week. They say it feels stable. I think they were getting it up into the higher speeds. But yeah, I agree with you. I think one, I mean, again, it is amazing. I've ridden like the Jetsons. I've ridden some of the smaller 14-inch wheel e-bikes, and they are nice in that they're small, low to the ground. They just feel kind of good in that you can control them. But yeah, it's fascinating to see people going, or potentially seeing people ride up to 50 on them. So I think we
Yeah.
just have to wait.
Yeah, I mean, the big question I have too is just like, what is the advantage of having that smaller wheel? Is it about the weight? Is it about maneuverability? Is it about something else? Like I know, gosh, I might be getting the name of this e-bike wrong, but it's like the Jack or the Jackrabbit or something. Do you know what I'm talking about, James?
Exactly. Right.
Yeah, the Jackrabbit. Yeah, and I mean, I actually, no offense to the Jackrabbit, but it looks like it's an e-bike for kids. And then I got on it and it was amazing. Like it's really, really light. It's portable. It's the type of thing that I think actually you can fit in an overhead compartment in an airline. So it's just like really easy to take while you're traveling places. That doesn't top out at 50 miles an hour though. So I definitely can see a use or like a reason why you would want to have those smaller wheels just to make something more portable, less heavy. But at the same time, I'm not sure what the benefit is when you have a faster vehicle that's like intended to go 50 miles an hour.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think again, in one way, it's really nice to see people potentially finding there's reasons why they'd want to have more micro sized vehicles in their lives. But yeah, even at 14-inch wheels, you have to worry about visibility on the road. You know, you are sitting a little bit lower. And again, I think that's fine when you're in bike lanes, but I think when you start to get on the real road and you go on artillery ways, there's potentially safety concerns there. Clearly off road, and they showed them going off road and stuff, of course, as well. I think that could be a lot of fun and just a really different way to ride with tires that small.
Yeah. James, it seems like we're getting more and more wheels articles each week. So maybe we should just do a special section of this show that's just about wheels and wheel sizes.
True. Yeah, you're right.
So James, yeah, right. So James, taking us in a slightly different direction. My next article for this week is about the fire department. So New York City ongoing saga about battery regulation, apartment building owners saying no e-bikes in buildings because of spate of fires that have been happening. So most recently, the FDNY, the fire department in New York commissioner, is asking the federal government, asking the feds to be more proactive in regulating batteries at the border. And what she's saying is that, essentially the batteries that are being imported are not quality controlled. And so she's saying federal government, as these batteries are being imported, like there needs to be quality control. There needs to be some way of penalizing manufacturers who are bringing in crap stuff. And basically saying that like, these are really basic steps that can make e-micromobility devices safer, but not increase the cost to consumers. And the FDNY feels like they are on the front lines. It feels weird to say front lines for something like e-batteries, but anyways, they're like on the front lines of the fight against deadly fires involving batteries and e-micromobility devices. And so they're really just appealing to the federal government for help. So when I read this story, I asked myself, regulation, okay, can be good, can be bad. Is this appeal to the federal government hopeful? What do you think, James?
Yeah, so crazy topic. It's like, I think you could describe it as a mess, right? It's really a mess. You have so many different things coming together in a place like New York City that it's just there's no easy answer. So I think what the fire department did probably was out of an abundance of caution and just probably dealing with the devastating impact of battery fires that can occur inside of especially apartment buildings or just buildings that are more dense, that have more people in them. I know there was a specific story more recently in New York where one of the more recent fires was because literally someone was running like a e-bike chop shop out of one of the floors where they had just stolen all these e-bikes and there was batteries everywhere. It's just like, oh,
Wow. Oh my gosh.
how can we got to deal with that. I agree with you, with regulation, we just need to think about the second and third order effects of that. I think New York is here in America, New York is on the cutting edge of not only, of course, people riding, micromobility vehicles for things like commuting, but as well, I mean, most last mile deliveries in New York are done via some sort of micromobility vehicle, whether that's e-bike, moped, scooter. It's just not as simple as saying like we can't have these vehicles anymore. Like you literally New York would stop, and this wouldn't be good either if people say went back into cars or something, which also catch fire, kill people, all those sort of really bad things. So one thing that we've been putting forward at Micromobility Industries is this idea of no regulation without subsidization. I think the 90% problem with the batteries are people buying cheap batteries overseas, as the commissioner of the fire department pointed out. How you most likely can stop that is if you allow people to buy higher quality branded vehicles that come with higher quality batteries, but those are expensive. And so how do you make them more affordable for all these people? And so what I've been a little bit discouraged by is that the complaint that came out and the letter that came out wasn't, there's been no response yet from the New York City mayor office or anyone to say, hey, in combination with more regulation, let's also talk about e-bike incentives or moped incentives, scooter incentives, whatever it might be, that could actually replace these vehicles, whether it's a clunker trade-in program, which, there's plenty of historical examples of, or it's just, hey, let's give people that are last mile workers a certain amount, and again, you can manage this at the company level, at the fleet level. And so this program, I mean, I just think I think we're months away from something coming out from New York in that vein. I just don't think it can go on. So it's a tragic issue. It's really tough. I think cooler heads will prevail as it relates to any sort of bans, which again, there's some legislation potentially going through around that. And what I think I'm most excited about is let's get higher quality vehicles in people's hands, and I think that solves a lot of the problems.
Yeah, and I mean, on that note, if you're listening to this podcast and you're in New York and you have any leads on what policy-wise or regulatory-wise is happening, if you think there are going to be subsidies or if you think that there is going to be a ban on e-bikes in apartment buildings, let us know. I think this is an area that we're very deeply interested in, partly because, and I'm going to show a chart here, New York has been such a leader in terms of protected bike lanes. So, over the past several years, we've seen a 14% increase in terms of the total bike lane miles installed in New York, just on the protected lane side. We've seen a commensurate or, actually, I would say like exponential increase in the number of New York City daily commuters by bike. It's up 234% in the last 15 years. So I think what would be really terrible about this situation is if the fires and the lack of quality control of the batteries themselves was the reason why New York City couldn't see delivery by e-bike, for example. And so just to wrap up this story, James, and then pass it back over to you. I mean, one of the other things that I didn't mention that is happening is that some of the labor unions and some of the other sort of trade groups are starting to organize education about charging and education about battery. And that has to be the other side of the coin when you're talking about the quality control of the batteries themselves. Like sometimes things are just being used improperly. And so, providing some education around that, really, really important.
Yeah, I agree. Big topic. And yeah, I love what you said there, Julia, where it's like, hey, if you're experiencing this in New York, we'd love to hear from you. And clearly this is not the end by any means. Okay, so next topic on my end is the very, very, very exciting topic, Julia, of automated ticketing. SRLC. That is speeding and red light cameras. SRLC. Yeah. So this is I'm sure you're just ecstatic to talk about this right now. But I actually am. I'm very excited about the potential of automated ticketing and red light and speeding ticketing. And some people on Twitter are as well. So I got a couple friends out there. Shout out to like Jake Gata, who really preaches this, and I appreciate how he talks about this a lot on Twitter. Brings up a lot of use cases. But basically, I wanted to bring it up because it's a very polarizing thing. It's a very polarizing thing. And so you don't find a lot of support for automated ticketing. And that this at the same time, of course, you have these like really tragic outcomes because of, a really speeding and red light running in, intersections all around the world. And there's pretty clear data on this where, there's a French study that's out there. There's an Edmonton study. These are peer-reviewed studies. There's an Oxford, California study out there. There's quite a few studies. And, the overwhelming majority of these studies show that automated ticketing for red light and speeding traffic infractions go way down when you start to put up these cameras. There is a study I should point out of Houston, Texas, here in the U.S., that actually doesn't show this. They ran a Monte Carlo simulation and did some work, and they found that actually rear end collisions were up because of enforcement, which is interesting if you think about it. That what that most likely means is people stopping very quickly because they don't want to maybe get an infraction for running a red light, and then the car behind them hitting them, which maybe means they were both going to run the red light. It's a very weird, but that's often the counter example study that's cited when people talk about not doing this. And I've seen this a little bit at my local level in terms of trying. They did a trial program and then they pulled the cameras out. And so, on one side, politically on the right, I think there's some problems here where they might call this like nanny state or, don't tread on me or, something like that. On the left, you have like this, I find this increasing as it relates to mobility, this increasing apprehension towards technology. It's sort of like what I call the Elon Musk derangement syndrome, where everyone just sort of thinks technology means someone's going to make a lot of money and we shouldn't do this. Like a little bit like Luddite behavior for fear of, I don't know, again, someone capitalizing on this. So I find there's very little support for this, but I think it is a very good way, based on the data, to actually reduce red light running and speeding through intersections, which again is a massive reason for the high, like a lot of the high death rate collisions where someone T-bones a driver going through red light, things like that. So I'm just curious what you think, Julia. Where do you stand on automated ticketing, on speed enforcement via something other than like, police officer having a speed gun?
Yeah. I mean, I was going to say this has actually been a huge topic of conversation in LA and actually in New York too. And it's known by a different acronym. So it's ALPR, Automated License Plate Recognition. And it's similar technology, or there's different types of technology that you can use to do the same thing. Essentially, it just recognizes the license plate and then, ties it back to a DMV account, ties it back to a bank account, able to issue the tickets automatically. Where this has been really helpful in, my universe of things is actually in bus lane enforcement. So making sure that cars are not parking in bus lanes, that bus lanes are able to get through uninhibited. And that makes a huge difference, honestly, in terms of the frequency, the availability, the on-timeness of transit itself. So it's been a very helpful tool in LA, in New York, in terms of hitting those numbers. Where it has also come up is just in terms of equity. And I think, to be honest, the jury is a little bit still out around whether ALPR or whatever this other acronym is. SLRC, is that what it is?
Yep, you got it.
But the other acronym, SLRC, is good or bad for equity. I think that the studies that I've read or the analyses that I've looked into have said that actually, removing a person from the ticketing itself is a good way of improving equity and a good way of kind of, reducing racial bias in terms of traffic stops. So, overall, I think this is something and a technology that can be really, really useful. And something that, I think we should continue to explore, maybe cautiously and conscientiously, knowing that, especially as you're collecting information, not that information isn't collected about all of us, or a lot of information isn't collected about all of us, we have to be careful in how we protect that and make sure that it's reducing and not increasing bias.
Yeah, a very good point on the bias and potentially the way that the technology could be less biased. Why don't you think? I mean, so you live in LA. I think there was that tragic red light accident where the woman nurse and killed multiple people going like 80 miles per hour, and I think also had like 9 infractions on her record or something like so. What do you see this adoption happening quicker? Like the technology is there. Like why aren't we? Why? And you have so much experience with this and policy and stuff. Like why isn't this being rolled out faster? there was an accident last week in Seal Beach where 3 teenagers were critically injured on a red light running, driver running a red light, hitting them. Like, why is there more urgency on this?
Yeah, I mean, I can think of a few reasons. I know the legend in LA is that we used to have speed cameras actually at almost all intersections, and then they became illegal because of this very issue that I mentioned around equity, or for that matter, inequity. And so there was concern about how, speed cameras were being placed only in neighborhoods of color or in low income neighborhoods across LA. And so, there was some legislation around just removing them, and they never put them back. And it's become too difficult to put them back. So I think, that's the case in LA. I would say, just from experience, again, being in government, people feel differently about government holding data versus private sector holding data. I'm not going to comment on that now, but, just in terms of like the speed of the rollout of this, I think part of it is just around how much data people feel comfortable with government having. So from a safety perspective, from a ticketing perspective, the numbers are all good. Like, I think the technology, as long as it's actually accurately capturing the license plate, and actually accurately ticketing people, is good, and having good results. It's just, a question of whether people feel comfortable with data being collected.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's good to
Yeah.
hear. You got a good experience there. So thank you.
Yeah. 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 No, and this is like a completely different topic. But I I'm going to flash up on my screen a photo of three very happy people. These are the three founders of Cowboy, the Belgian-based direct-to-consumer e-bike maker. They are predicting that they're going to be profitable by this summer. So in 2021, they made 2021, they made 15 million euros of revenue. Now they're projecting to reach 49 million euros of revenue in 2022, or I guess actually they already reached 49 million euros of revenue in 2022. And now in 2023, they're thinking that they're going to be profitable. I have to say, this article was in French, so I had to pull out my university French, remember what it was like to live in Paris, and figure out what all of these words were in like MBA speak. But it was a fun read, and certainly fun to see that at least one of the e-bike companies, well, multiple e-bike companies, but at least one of the e-bike companies is projected to be profitable. James, I know there's a bit of a backstory about this, though. There's a bit of a backstory about Cowboy. So what can you tell us? What scoop can you give us?
Yeah, sure. So I mean, you saw as you mentioned, Julia, one of the founders, Tanguy, had talked about that story that was out there, and talking about the revenue increase, and I was very excited. And I've always been a big fan of Cowboy. I know you're a writer of them, Julia, and I kind of congratulated Tanguy on the article, and just seeing the success is awesome. Later in the week, an article came out from the Belgian press talking about how Cowboy was actually struggling and was sort of in need of emergency funding. This comes on the heels of VanMoof a couple of weeks ago. There will also be an article about VanMoof really struggling with fundraising. These articles, come out from time to time. It's hard to really get a sense if they're, how true they are. Clearly, companies are raising money all the time. Oftentimes, even investors can leak information to the press as a way to negotiate better, kind of force the other side back to the table. So there's, we only know so much, but it does seem clear that there was a bit of a hit piece put out on Cowboy that came out. And so I think them releasing their revenue numbers was probably a strategic play that showed them that they are very healthy, and that, the growth of the business is incredible. And clearly, I think on the most macro, mindset, fundraising has become harder for all companies, not just, micromobility companies. And so I'm skeptical of the article. Tanguy also came out and sort of said that article was full of misinformation, and he made a kind of a quip that oftentimes the European press wants to take down European companies. And I thought that was an interesting thing. I mean, I think here in America, we deal with the same thing. So I don't think it's a continental or anything, or country. But yeah, I thought his response was good and level headed. And, I wish these guys the best of luck, and hopefully we'll, clearly talk to them more and see more of their upcoming releases they have. So yeah, I think but to celebrate the numbers, that growth is incredible. And that's real, millions of dollars in growth. And yeah, I think it's awesome.
Yeah. And I mean, I actually don't own a Cowboy bike, but I did use one for the past month. And one of the things that struck me is that it's just a beautiful bike. I mean, like I had people come up to me. I had, friends who were like, "What's that bike? Like that bike looks interesting." It's just very, very sleek looking. My experience with it too is that, as opposed to some of the other bikes that I rode, just very smooth switching between gears and everything else, and having the assist come on. And certainly a lighter bike than you find with some of the other e-bikes that have potentially more power. And then my one beef with it, my one issue with it is LA's got some hills. And so Cowboy still feels like it's a bike that's meant for, a place like Belgium or some of the flatter European cities, as opposed to someplace, whether it's LA or San Francisco or, other cities that have a bit more of a terrain. And so it was sometimes hard to get up. I live like up quite a steep hill. It was hard to get up the hill. But in any case, I honestly, I'm happy to see any e-bike company become profitable. I think it's a really good marker for the rest of the industry. And, especially when we're talking about direct to consumer, interesting to test out that business model. So James, that's what I think.
Yeah, one final question for you there, Julia. How did you? And I've only ridden the Cowboy once. I have a Move, which is a similar style aesthetic, I think, to Cowboy. How did you feel about going downhill with the braking, and those hydraulic brakes? I'm just curious if you felt comfortable, if you ever didn't feel comfortable.
Felt comfortable, like almost didn't even notice it, which I guess is the best sign.
Good, yeah, that's great. Let's stay actually on the e-bike topic. A really cool report came out this week actually that I wanted to share. It was from Up Partners, which is a venture partnership, actually venture partner firm, venture capital firm. Sorry, Up Partners, a venture capital firm here in Southern California, out of Santa Monica. They put out a mobility report this week that is great. I recommend you all go to their website and download it. That's full of tons of charts and graphs. And we're actually going to pull a couple out for some of our topics here. And the first one I wanted to use it on was their projections. That's actually coming from their own analysis and some other analysis that they have that says that actually e-bikes will outsell all cars in Europe by 2025. So we often talk about how e-bikes are outselling electric vehicles, like even in America and in Europe. That's great. But actually their projections is that literally all car sales, e-bikes will eclipse all car sales. So that's ICE and electric car sales by 2025, growing at about 13% annual compounding, which is, again, why you want to potentially invest in these Cowboys and other companies. 13% compounding annual growth rate for the entire category is incredible. And then when you're a really good company, you grow faster than that. That's talking about some just amazing growth. So great slide. I saw this getting shared a lot around social this week. I think this curve only goes in one direction. I think this speaks to what we did in talking about our total addressable market in Micromobility America in September at 5 billion, where we basically reached peak car in almost all mature economies. And clearly there's still need for more mobility. That's maybe where we're like finding new mobility. So that could be on what's called non-consumption. So right now you don't take the car, but you might take an e-bike instead of walking, or you might just add a trip because it's so pleasurable on the e-bike. So there's a lot of growth ahead, it seems like, for vehicles. And, when you see this, I think about, when we started doing this, I really didn't think it would happen this quickly, to be honest. So awesome, amazing trend lines. Yeah. What do you think, Julia?
I am honestly not surprised to see this chart, although it does relate to the story that I want to bring up next, James. So maybe I can do that now, because I think what Up Partners is showing, and this is Ben Marcus's venture, right? Venture capital firm. Okay, cool. I know they originally got their start in advanced aerial mobility, and like they're kind of into drones. They're into electric vertical takeoff and landing aircraft, and so they were thinking about as part of their thesis for the venture firm, what are the components that need to be put into AAM in order to make it work, and kind of like, investing in companies that do that. So it sounds like they broadened out their thesis, looking more at mobility. And I actually think you're going to see that with a lot more investors who are starting to understand that they shouldn't be so focused in on, AAM or like on electric vehicles, but really look at a wider and broader variety of electrified vehicles, big or small. The thing that I think they got wrong, though, James, is actually about the geographies. I mean, they're just talking about the US and about Europe, but really, again, I like harp on this almost every episode. There's this electrified micromobility opportunity in Asia. So great graphs by BNEF. They're talking about how worldwide sales of internal combustion engine cars peaked in 2017. Now we're in permanent decline. The total number of ICE cars is going to shrink from 2024 onwards. Can't wait for that. And when they talk about, partly why this is going to happen, they talk about the reduction in oil consumption. Micromobility, and this is what you're seeing in this chart here. So these 2 and 3 wheelers are going to have the biggest immediate impact on reducing CO2 emissions. So we really can't underestimate their impact. We really can't emphasize enough their role in the future of urban mobility. Like I said, where this is becoming particularly obvious is in Asia. So in Southeast Asia, as you can see from this large title, the potential for two-wheelers to become electric is gigantic. I don't think I've seen the word gigantic in a while, but it works very well here. So the potential for two-wheelers to become electric is gigantic. Just to give you a couple stats on that, 85% of households in Indonesia own at least one motorcycle versus 14% in the US and 7% in the UK. That's crazy. That's nuts. I mean, and if you talk about India, the demand for two-wheel electric vehicles in India could be as high as 8.2 million vehicles a year. And then, another article from Autocar India was saying that the electric two-wheeler sales were up 305% based on 2021 figures. So again, I think, we talk so much about the US and Europe and about micromobility in the US and Europe. And I get some of that focus, especially because of the number of companies that are coming out of Europe in particular that are doing micromobility devices. But really, I think the story is Asia and particularly Southeast Asia and then South Asia.
Yeah, you've been on that. I think you're really right. It's also, you're hearing more rumors about like Tesla coming out with a motorcycle. And again, when you look at that data, you'd say, oh, well, they wouldn't do that in the US at 14% market share. Really, they've got so much other market share to attack. But as we know, if maybe you follow like the penetration of like technology companies, like software companies or more software-like companies, or like how the phone operating systems spread, clearly markets in Asia are critical to companies like Apple, Google, et cetera. And so it does make sense that as they start to, of course, build more plants out there and do more selling out there, that a huge product market fit in mobility in that area is two-wheel and three-wheel, which again makes me excited because as those markets buy those types of vehicles, I think it then becomes potentially more appealing in America and in Europe as well. And so, yeah, I think those numbers are fascinating. And again, it's why, in time, it's like, fruit flies versus elephants in terms of thinking about how many more micromobility vehicles will be out there than cars. And so that's really exciting. And I guess if you were to, one thing I love, to give up partners another shout out. It's really cool. They used one of our graphs that I do see around, and I think hopefully will continue to just spread, this is car trips by distance. So this isn't all trips. This is just car trips. So I think actually all trips taken, no matter if it's walking, public transit, micro, anything, it's about 63% of all trips are less than 3 miles. But for car trips specifically, in the U.S., over half the trips are less than 5 miles. And so it's really cool to think about, of course, displacing this. And so I just appreciate that they use this. My one criticism on their entire report was they defined micromobility as basically vehicles smaller than 100 kilograms, and we actually define it as less than 1,000 kilograms. So of course, mopeds, motorcycles, dirt bikes, NEVs, those are all classified as micro. So if anyone's listening out there from Up Partners, happy to talk to you about that and that definition and why we think about it as anything less than 1,000 kilograms, which really works out to in Imperial, that's 2,200 pounds. So yeah, shout out to Up Partners though. Overall, I think this was just a really cool project that they did, and I'm glad they put it out there into the world. Next topic, I'm up, Julia.
You are.
Let's stay on miles traveled. So titled this one "Cake Across America." So an account manager at the micromobility company Cake Her name is Sinhe Gottwald. Actually traveled the entire continent of Africa on a caulk dirt bike. So a Cape Caulk dirt bike. She was the first person ever to do an unassisted ride across the continent. And she did it on an electric dirt bike, which is super, super fascinating. So I just wanted to show a photo of her real quick and giving her some kudos, which is just so, so cool because that is not easy. So here she is. And again, I've ridden the caulk. Julia, have you ridden you've ridden the caulk too?
I have, sure
We
have.
call that riding what happened to you on the caulk, I think. But
Oh, okay, James, you know what? You don't have to air my dirty laundry on this freaking podcast. People I know watch this, and I don't want them to know all of my stories. Okay, James?
I mean,
You find this hilarious, but it's not.
Not funny. Never funny. Safety first. I was so impressed by you on the caulk. I didn't dare to ride it when you were riding in that little parking lot. I needed much more open road.
Let me just say it's too heavy. You shouldn't be drinking wine before or after riding a caulk.
Not, and we would never have that at our events. No drinking and driving.
Super event.
Absolutely. But yeah, this is a big bike, right, Julia? I mean, when you rode it, it feels big. You're high up, and to ride it 1,300 kilometers. What's that in miles, Julia? Quick math in the morning. What do you got for me?
No idea. Don't do this to me.
That's like 7,200 miles. I think that is far. And the fact that she did it unassisted, electric, clearly she had to figure out, how to keep it charged. And there's a little bit of a map of it. Awesome, inspiring ride. Shows the power.
That must have been beautiful. I'm very jealous. I wonder how long this took her.
Range anxiety, right? Like, what are we talking about range anxiety here? Like, she went across all of Africa on an electric dirt bike, like alone. That's incredible. So yeah, hats off to her. Such a cool promo. The photos are beautiful. You can check it out. But yeah, I guess my question to you, Julia, is when are you doing that?
Whenever I can get time off work. I mean, honestly, now that she said it, I'm totally inspired. Like, Sinhei also must be about 6'3" or 6'4", because my biggest issue with the caulk is that it's like a real high up there bike. So in order to even get on there, I need like a little bit of a stepping stool to get up there. But no, I mean, I think that looks absolutely beautiful. Definitely applaud her doing that. Would love to watch a video diary of what it was like. I mean, I'm just sure like the vistas, let alone just meeting different people, being in that number of countries, probably amazing. And you know what could be cool, James, is like to start to feature some of the people who have been doing those cross-continent e-bike journeys or micromobility journeys and to see what they've experienced. I know, there's a tradition of doing that by motorcycle, and so many folks, including like Ewan McGregor, are even doing that by electric motorcycle. But I would love to see, just what does it look like if somebody does that by e-scooter or by e-bike? I don't know. Maybe we can get Horace to do that and just, go across Europe or go across, I don't know where else he wants to go across Europe, go across Mongolia, and just see what it looks like by e-scooter.
Absolutely. And if you're listening, Sinhei, or anyone that knows her, how tall is she? 6'3". I don't know if she's 6'3" based on these photos, but I mean, maybe that would yeah, but it is a big bike. You're right.
Yeah. So James, just to take us home and to stay on this theme of beautiful places, I wanted to end at least my articles with this image because it just is so relaxing, and it's going to be Friday, and like, who doesn't want to go into the weekend with just this like beautiful image of water and bridges and greenery? But where do you think this is before I tell you what the story is?
Well, I know because I saw the story.
Okay, well, fine. Just tell people.
Yeah. Welsh, somewhere in Welsh.
Yeah. I mean, the country is called Wales, or the or UK is called Wales, not Welsh.
Sure, the Welsh Road, right? I'm pretty headline. Wales.
Geography lessons next time. Yeah. Shout out to the Welsh. No, shout out to the place of Wales. I guess I don't know if it's called a country. Anyways, I don't want to get into UK politics. But in any case, the going back to the actual story, the story here is that the Welsh have halted some road building projects because they have a new policy that causes them or forces them to look at the impacts of the project on the climate emergency. And so they just decided to cancel like something like 50 road building projects because they had too high impacts on the climate. And I just thought that this was really fantastic because you still see in the US, federal dollars, any dollars being spent on things like highway widening or freeway widening projects, even though we know that they have negative impacts on climate. And to see a country or whatever we want to call Wales decide that, they're just not going to do these road building projects because the climate emergency is an emergency, I think is really fantastic and a policy I hope to see copied and pasted in other places.
Yeah, so do you think this will happen in the US? So for instance, I think I've seen that a little bit with the freeway widening programs, that the argument is actually they'll stop widening freeways because of these emission goals. Is that true? Or are we talking about like goals like Vision Zero goals, which we say and then never hit? Like
Yeah.
and it does seem like this worked, but again, this is one area. I'm curious if you see this happening in the US or if it's all just it won't happen.
Yeah. I think we're going to see fragmented progress across the US. For example, Colorado, which one might say it's the Wales of the US, actually, I don't know if they would like that. I don't know if they would like that comparison. But they have their own policy around looking at the climate impacts of each of their transportation projects, including things like road widenings. And so they've actually stopped some of their freeway widening or some of their highway widening projects because they knew that the climate impacts were going to be such that it just didn't make sense to do. So again, yeah, I think you're going to see this start to be adopted on a state by state basis. Whether it becomes something that's universally adopted, one would hope. And I think that's certainly what the Biden administration and Secretary Buttigieg at the U.S. Department of Transportation are pushing for. The question is how successful they'll be, especially given how litigious we can be between state and national governments here in the U.S.
Okay, one more dumb question. What do you do? I mean, again, what about the argument of like, well, let's widen the freeways because we're going to move the tailpipe and all these vehicles on the freeway are going to be electrified. Are we talking about other types of emissions like, rubber on the tires and noise emissions? Yeah. Or
yeah,
that like, no, actually, once we all have electric cars, we'll make 50-lane freeways.
Yeah. I mean, James, how much time do you have? Because like we could really get quite in the details, quite in the weeds about this. So I'll give the TLDR high level version, which is that, we say emissions kind of casually. And usually when we say emissions, we're talking about carbon equivalent emissions. So things like tailpipe emissions. But honestly, what we really should be talking about is everything that you just mentioned. Electric vehicles still have air quality impacts. A lot of the, pollutants that you have from cars actually come from the friction between the tire and the road. You mentioned noise pollution, huge thing. And of course, then there's the time savings. Like it's still not great to have people just like, stacked up in traffic from a mobility perspective and accessibility perspective. Not to mention that the other thing with emissions is it depends on how, now I'm really going down the rabbit hole, aren't I? So I'll say one more thing, which is that, we gotta, you gotta think about life cycle emissions. Like it's not just the emissions from the operation of the vehicle itself. It's about the manufacturing of the vehicle, what happens with the vehicle after you've, finished using it. And so, electric vehicles, long story short, are not emissions free, however you look at emissions.
Okay. That was good, Julia. That was tight. Yeah.
I tried to keep it short.
Very short. All right, let's end on the blurring lines of all these micromobility vehicles. So we've gotten a couple of comments on this recently in our newsletter, which have been really good. We got one actually just I saw come in this morning around the what this person called the SUV-ification of e-bikes. So sort of e-bikes becoming these like SUV type vehicles, which I think in this case, the commenter was saying that's a negative thing. Like, we're sort of getting away from what a bike is, and these things are becoming SUVs. This also comes on the back of, I know I was talking with the folks at People for Bikes earlier this week, and they have increasing concerns, along with, I think, everyone, just around like the class system that we have here in the US, class 1, 2, 3, and the idea that with software and with just how powerful a lot of the motors are now that are being built, and the battery strengths that, of course, these vehicles could go a lot faster and really can actually be controlled with software. So, and we see that there's vehicles out there, of course, that blur the line between moped and e-bike from a speed perspective. And so I think this is a big topic. And again, just to highlight a vehicle that we showed this week on Ride Review. Here is from Quiet Cat. This is the Lynx from Quiet Cat, and Quiet Cat is known for making. They're out of Colorado. They're known for making sort of hunter e-bikes, quiet hunting e-bikes, and that are like in the Lynx here has 4.5-inch tires, so they can kind of go anywhere. But this is also a sort of a departure from a lot of the other e-bikes Quiet Cat makes. This is what's called a cafe moto style that I think was popularized out in England, where sort of you strip away as much as you can from the vehicle to make it as aerodynamic and sort of as fast as possible. And with a motor in this thing, again, this thing could go a lot faster than what typical e-bikes go, a lot quieter. And so there's probably some advantages to having this along with your other maybe portfolio of Quiet Cat vehicles that you might have if you live in places where you hunt and do things like that. So this is just one example. I think earlier, of course, showing the new vehicle from Voro Motors that's got 14-inch wheels but goes 51 miles per hour. We just have a lot of these examples where I think the question is what's happening, and are we, where is the industry going? I think it's clear here in the U.S. that an e-bike that sort of rides and looks like a bike does not sell that well, from everything I can tell. Fatter tires do better, a slightly different type of seat does better, it seems. And so, yeah, I'm fine with it. I think it is what it is. Let the consumer decide, and they'll vote with their wallet type thing. Clearly, we also have policy issues where we have classes and you're expected to go a certain speed. But I'll also push back on the regulation there, where in America here we have a lot of share lanes, just where you put the green marker down that a bike can be fully in this lane on 40-mile-per-hour roads. So if you're just a normal person and you're okay, this road is telling me I'm allowed to take the full lane, but my class bike will only go to 28 miles per hour on a 40-mile-per-hour road. What am I supposed to do? Are you setting me up to die? Because cars are going to go 40 on this road. And so if you had a Wii in software, let's say, to say, oh, I can switch this actually to 40, so I can go 40 on this road when I need to, wouldn't you do that? Just out of basic survival instincts? So I think there's all these challenges where, we have a system, we have clearly the power to go faster, and then we have the challenge that our policymakers and our roads are set up to where we might need to go faster at times. And I think that's causing this kind of blurred phenomenon. And I think you're seeing it in the design and what people are actually want and what they're buying. So no more questions than answers, I think, on my end, but I'm curious what you think, Julia, about all this.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I actually think about it in a slightly different way. So first of all, I want to say the Quiet Cat Lynx is a great looking vehicle. I mean, that thing looks really good. And so just generally, I mean, I love one of the things I love about micromobility is just the incredible diversity of all the vehicles. And then you can pick something that meets your aesthetic, that meets what your needs are in terms of the performance of the vehicle itself, that could be part of a library of vehicles. But what I think, and actually I've been talking about this with friends and people who aren't in the mobility industry or the micromobility industry, I think what, I kind of have a question, or there might be a tension between these vehicles being so different and the fact that we're trying to roll it out to mass adoption and to, mass consumer adoption. And if you just look at micromobility vehicles versus cars are so standardized. You've got the SUV, you've got the sedan, you've got the truck, and even, between makes and models, and I don't mean to, kind of diminish this too much, but there's not that much difference in the aesthetic between the makes and models. But on the micromobility side, of course, there's a huge difference in the aesthetics, the makes and models, the performance of the vehicles themselves. So getting back to this point about level 1, 2, and 3, I think the micromobility industry right now, it's awesome that we have so many different types of vehicles. I think there is going to have to be some standardization, and maybe it's not level 1, 2, and 3, but maybe it's another type of standardization just to get to mass adoption, because I think the consumer, especially those consumers who don't want to go into the weeds of why, the bike works the way that it does or why the Quiet Cat Lynx works the way that it does, is going to need to have like a slightly easier, more friendly, off-the-shelf experience in terms of purchasing a vehicle. So I think what we're going to start to see in the micromobility industry in order to get to that mass consumer adoption is a bit more of a standardization across different types of vehicles. And that includes, maybe moving away from this level 1, 2, 3 and moving towards something that's more easily identifiable by the average consumer about what type of vehicle they're purchasing.
Okay. Maybe just a question here, because I'm really fascinated by your opinion. We want people to displace their car trips with e-bikes and other micromobility vehicles. I think that's a goal, right? But again, I think if you really look at the road networks, in order to do that, people need to be able to go certain speeds and need to feel safe going those speeds. So what do you think happens first? Do you think the idea is these e-bikes will be going faster on the example I showed, where again, it's not very common. You can go out there and see shadows on 40-mile-per-hour roads. That's a very common thing. Do you think the first thing that happen is these vehicles will go faster, or do you think the speed limits will come down so that we just slow people down, because it's probably the safer thing to do anyway, whether you're in a car or an e-bike? What do you think happens first?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a difference between what I think should happen first and what will happen first. But certainly what should happen first is that all speeds should come down on all roads. I mean, we shouldn't be driving so fast, except for if you're going to be on the freeway, everywhere else, it should be 35 miles per hour or below. Just because, when you're talking about just safety for anybody, that's the speed you should be going. And there's all sorts of compelling data around why, but that's really what should happen first. What will happen first, I think, is a longer conversation and maybe for another podcast.
Well, we can leave it there. And again, I think that's a good place to leave it, and something that I think will continue to happen. And for anyone out there making vehicles, trying new designs, trying to people thinking about legislation as relates to the class system, we're all ears for your comments and your feedback. So yeah, that wraps us up. Julia, why don't you take us out?
James, always a pleasure to do these podcasts with you. And how do we end these? What do we say? We normally say, "Ride on."
Ride on.
All right. Have a good day, y'all.